All right, guys. Well, listen, this is another Brand Doctor Podcast episode for you guys. And today I have a very, very special guest. I met this awesome individual, oh my God, almost 16 years ago, believe it or not, at a fundraising event that I was helping out with when I worked at the Sudden Infant Death Syndrome Center that you guys know I worked at earlier in my professional career. And I was at this leadership breakfast not too long ago at the Meadowlands Chamber of Commerce. And this guy was actually being recognized as he was the keynote of the day, and he was being recognized for his awesome achievements and leadership. And I had to approach him and say, dude, you got to come on the podcast, man. We go back a long time. And he's like, who's this guy? But without further ado, I want to introduce Frank Vuono from 16W Marketing to the show today. How are we doing, my friend?
Doing awesome. Got a beautiful day, and couldn't be doing better, you know. Anything better would be to be on the golf course today.
I saw that you were an avid golfer.
Yeah. No, I try to be. You know, I only play on days that end in Y. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's get into sort of the backstory. I love having guests on the show and really understanding the backstory, where you got to where you're at today. And again, if you could give us the 3 or 4 minute version of that, because I know it goes back quite some time, but it's funny. I'll tell you something in a little bit. So let's start from the beginning. Where did you catch the marketing bug, and where'd you start out, and how'd you get to where you're at today?
Well, it was real interesting. I was coming out of Princeton University. I came out of Lyndhurst, New Jersey. I'm still here. I'm actually in my house today, babysitting my grandson. And I'm coming out of school, and I'm doing a lot of different interviews, and I'm not really feeling it. You know, I was a football player in college, and I guess a lot of people back then thought football player, macho guy, he should go into sales. So I did interviews with, I don't know how old your audience is, but with companies like Procter & Gamble and General Foods and all these big packaged goods companies. And I really wasn't feeling it. You know, squeeze the guy's hand real hard, look him in the eyeballs. You know, it really kind of wasn't me. And fortunately, long story short, I had an athletic director at Princeton by a guy named Royce Flippin, who I had voiced my uneasiness, my unhappiness with him. I said, you know, played 4 years of ball at Princeton. No doors have been opened yet. I'm pondering my future. And he said, well, come and see me. So I went to see him, and he said, what do you really want to do? And I don't know why. I said, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. I built a student agency at Princeton selling T-shirts, and so I like marketing, and I'm an artist. I did the graphic arts down at school. I drew all the players in the program and so on. So I said, you know, advertising. And who the hell knows why that popped into my brain, but he had a connection with Young and Rubicam. I didn't even know it. Here's the athletic director who came out of General Foods and had Young and Rubicam as his agency. He calls up, and it's a long story. I won't bore you with it, but it's actually pretty funny because I showed up for my first interview at Y&R. They said, wear a suit. So the only suit I had was a white leisure suit. So I actually showed up for my first interview with a white leisure suit. So, true story. Anyway, that was the beginning. I got a great training, had great mentors, great guidance, and they were real strategic. Y&R was known for its strategic marketing and its positioning back then. Now everybody calls it branding, but back then it was positioning. And I rose through the ranks there. I became one of their youngest vice presidents. And then the entrepreneurial bug hit me again. I left with one of the partners. Formed a public company. We took public and learned a lot about that, how to start a company, how not to start a company. And then through my boss from Y&R, who became one of my best friends, who I went into business with when we took the company public, his next door neighbor was running things at the NFL, and he asked, is there a young marketing guy who's also really into sports? And thank God this guy was not only my boss, but he was one of my best friends, and he recommended me to the folks at the NFL. So I went to work at National Football League Properties, took over their licensing division, and did very, very well there. In the process there, I met a lot of the players in the NFL, especially the quarterbacks, because I was part of formulating something called the NFL Quarterback Club. And I got to know these guys really, really well. And I'm talking about the real top guys, and John Elway, Dan Marino, Warren Moon, you name it, Bernie Kosar, Phil Simms, Boomer Esiason, all the top guys you can name. And we put those guys together in a group, and they actually hired me at the NFL, not the Players Association, to represent them. And so as I was doing that, these guys ultimately said, hey, why don't you come out of the NFL and represent us? And so in 1993, after 7.5 years of building up the business at the NFL, I left and formed my own agency called ISI. And I've been, I was with a partner, Steve Rosner, who we just celebrated on May 1st, our 25th anniversary of being together. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's really great. And we built that company up, Integrated Sports International. We wound up representing who's who across all of sports, not only team sports, but individual sports. And then we sold that to SFX in 1999. And they subsequently sold to Clear Channel. And clause in my contract said I needed to be president of the whole agency. So this $4.4 billion company out of San Antonio, Texas, was not going to have an Italian from New Jersey be the president of the whole place. So I was able to get out of that, and we formed 16W Marketing, which we have to this day.
Ah, that's awesome. What a story. I mean, so it just went smooth, right? You just soared to the top. No issues, no problem, right?
No, anybody who's listening, know that just never happens. You know, I learned a lot. I can tell you some harrowing stories, actually. When we formed the company, when I left Y&R, there was a lot of trouble, SEC, so on and so forth. I learned a lot about taking a company public. I didn't know anything about that before. When I left the NFL, listen, when I did my talk to the leadership conference, I said, you really have to have confidence, and you really have to be able to take a risk if you're going to be a leader. And leaving the NFL and going out on my own in 1993 was scary. And we ultimately wound up with about 65 to 70 employees. And when you got to make that payroll nut every 2 weeks, and there's no big corporation behind you, and, I used to always have to pull out my wallet and show people and say, listen, if we don't kill, we don't eat.
I love that mentality. I mean,
and I said, we got to make it every 2 weeks. We got to bring the cash in order for you guys to draw paychecks. And you know how it goes. Sometimes my two partners and we had another partner, Fred Freed, who was with us at the time. And the three of us sometimes couldn't take our own pay. We couldn't take our own draw because we had to meet payroll. So there's always bumps along the road. And there's always things, another trait of being a leader that I mentioned was honesty. And I got to tell you, there were a lot of moments with NFL owners, with players, with the people that we did business with, sponsors and so on, where, things came down to a real moment of truth on occasion. And we knew if we told the absolute truth, we had the risk of losing a client or really upsetting an NFL owner or whatever it might be. But ultimately, we always decided telling the truth was the best thing. And that's worked for us. And luckily, we were able to survive those those bumps in the road.
What's going through your head when you're trying to make payroll? You see the P&L, and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because there's been times in my career where things got a little tight. And I remember those days, and those are the times. It's like when it rains, it pours, right? So like, it's not just that, it's this, and this. And how did you stay focused? What was your mindset? What were you telling yourself to get through those tough times?
Well, There's a lot, there's a lot that you face with that. One of the things that gets you through it is relationships. Okay, not only well, there's internal relationships, right? So if you've built a great team, right, you're able to bring them all together, get them in a room and say, listen, you have to have transparency, you have to have honesty, and they have to trust you, right? Guys, we're all in this together, right? This is our challenge. Let's focus on one goal at a time. Let's put one foot in front of another. These are the obstacles that we face. So that's my grandkids. I don't know.
I'm surprised you don't hear my little guy.
Sorry about that. So, that's the one part of it, which was the internal part. Then there's the external part in terms of the relationships, in terms of all your clients, all your sponsors, all the people you're depending on money for. Hi, buddy boy. You have to go in there, Lisa, okay? Sorry, guys. Okay. So, if you have the relationship with the clients, and you can overcome those bumps in the road, right? When things hit and you're don't have that long understanding and trust, and you haven't built. I always say you got to build up the chips, right? You got to do more things for people than they do for you, and then when you got to every once in a while, then you got to cash in the chips. So sometimes you got to cash in the chips. Hey, can you front us some money? Hey, can you advance us the next month's pay or whatever it might be? Whatever it might be, right? And so if you don't have the relationships, you know what happens. If you don't have the relationships, the minute you hit that, even a little speed bump, they're going the other way. Hey, why didn't you deliver this? Hey, why didn't you deliver that? You're hearing all the noise about they don't want to be with you. Okay? When you're together, you hear all the noise. Hey, you know what? You guys have been good for me. I understand. I know you're a small company. We're a big company. We can advance you the money, whatever. And I had some remarkable things go on like that with Disney, with pro teams, the Cleveland Browns. I had a great friend, Carmen Policy, there. We did awesome things when he became an owner of the Browns with Al Lerner in Cleveland, and we did remarkable things there. But we weren't going to collect until all their money came in, right? So we're fronting all the expenses. So you get those phone calls. To get Disney to front me, money that they were going to owe us for the next 20 years was just incredible. But it's Disney, right? So to them, it wasn't so bad. And we had performed, and so they were able to help us overcome those obstacles and those bumps.
I love it. At the end of the day, it does come down to relationships. And one of the things that I want to talk about and get into detail with is you manage a lot of unique personal brands. Very high top level, high profile personal brands. And what are some of the things that we need to look at as entrepreneurs today to really create that personal brand, whether you're a coach, consultant, an athlete, a trainer, whatever the case may be? What are some key characteristics of a fantastic personal brand, a personal brand that is going to get recognized and sought after?
Well, there's a lot to that. I mean, protecting somebody's image is paramount in what we try to do. You heard me say in my speech the other day, when I was talking about the truth, I said, why didn't somebody tell OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., I wish I could sit the guy down and say, look,
knock it off.
Listen, I don't mind you being out there in today's world with the people that are going to relate to him. I don't mind you being out there, but ultimately you play for the New York Giants. And what is their brand? And what is their image? Okay, so if you're signing on and you're part of our team and this is who we are and what we are, I know John Mara really, really well. I've done tons of things with the Giants. And I know their image, okay? And you vary too far from that, you're not going to be around. You
Yeah.
know? So you want this big dollar, you want to be the biggest paycheck. It's okay for you to be new, exciting, dye your hair yellow, wear crazy shoes, do whatever the heck you want to do with regard to that, but within limits, right? And watch what you say within limits, right? What are the limits? We can stretch the envelope a little bit here, but what are the limits? So with our guys, they're probably, you know, we've represented a range of people, but now we represent people like Howie Long and Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason and Chris Collinsworth and Ron Darling. And you know what? They're probably more careful about their image, you know, than we might be. You know, sometimes we'll ask them to maybe do, you know, even a beer commercial.
I'm out.
You know, no, you know, one of our guys, I won't mention, you know, just had a bad experience being at a game with a beer in his hand. And somebody made a comment, and, you know, everybody today, that's the thing. You know, I can write a book. I never will because I'd probably get killed. But I could write a book of my experiences with the high profile athletes that I've been associated with or I've represented directly. Mm-hmm. Listen, the book would sell because the stories are wild. But that was many years ago. Right. And nobody carried around these things, right? You know, you weren't instantaneously, even the people that could get you in trouble wouldn't want to get you in trouble, right? The police, the security, whatever, everybody kind of watched out for you, right? Yeah. As long as you were a good guy, everybody watched out for you. Every kid, here's the thing, right? With athletes especially, this is remarkable. Once somebody sees somebody on television, a fan sees somebody on television performing, they think they're all grown up. In your mind, I bet, when you're watching, you're thinking of the people on the field being like your age. It's natural. I think it's just human nature. These must be mature adults who have their act together because they're so special. And they're on television. Right? That's not the case. It's actually totally the opposite. You know, a lot of these guys have been, you know, spoon-fed and trained and isolated and put in their bubble, and this is what you do. You focus on this. We got to get you into the best high school. We got to get you into the best college. Then we got to get you on the pro team. You know, we represented athletes over the course of time who never cashed a check in their life, who never wrote a check in their life until we had one first-round draft pick. You know, in the 1990s, we had the first pick in the NFL draft 7 years in a row. We had one of the quarterbacks who got drafted go with his brothers to the ATM. And the ATMs were even new then, so I'm really dating myself. But go to the ATM and wait for his first deposit to go in so that he and his brothers could see this on a screen, right? And so no one thinks about that. So all of a sudden, somebody's got millions of dollars in a bank account that he never even had open before. It's the first money that's ever been put in. He didn't even have a penny savings account, okay? So how do you go from that to then, you know, explaining to people what their image is and how to protect that and so on. So the assumption that everybody's all grown up, all mature, knows how to make rational decisions is a wrong assumption. So you have to really be tough sometimes to get people to understand what we're talking about from an image standpoint, and then you can protect it. Because once you get buy-in, right? If you give somebody a strategy, say, this is what we think you stand for. We used to call them the building blocks. You know, coming out of marketing, you know, if I could tell you why to buy this bar of soap instead of another bar of soap, that's a real challenge, right? why do you buy this? Why do you buy the toothpaste you buy, right?
Right.
Whatever it might be. So
it's brand.
Right. Well, those are marketing challenges. You know, Lord knows we could probably switch toothpaste or switch sodas or switch whatever, deodorants, whatever it might be, and you probably wouldn't even know, but you're used to the message and the brand that's been selling. Well, it's the same with people. You know, what do you stand for, and why is somebody going to associate with you, and why is somebody going to like you, and why is a company going to trust you to represent their product? And it has to be consistent. You know, choose the things that you stand for, choose the things you might use yourself, choose the things you might want your kids to use or play with or whatever else it might be, and then you'll be okay. You know,
yeah. It comes down to values. I think what are your values? How strong is your mindset? I was talking to one of my coaches not too long ago, and they were talking about how they meet with a lot of folks that are making $1 million a month in revenue, and you would think that they would be the happiest people on the planet, and they have their stuff together and everything is legit, but they're little babies. They're little mental messes. And I was like, that's it blows my mind, because what are you complaining about? You got the world by you know to what, right?
It's interesting when you say that they make millions of dollars. You know, we're in a very unique position. For most of my career, we've represented the athletes on their off the field stuff. We weren't really contract agents per se. And so, but the mentality, we call it the athlete mentality, it's really interesting. For the agent side of the business on their contract, they treated those guys tough, horribly, because to them, that was their salary. That's what's expected.
Right.
We always came in like the white knights because we're the stuff that allows them to go and treat their wife or buy new furniture or buy new clothes. We're the luxury, and we're also the braggadocio, right? We're also the ego feeders because, hey, I'm on television doing that commercial, right? Right. So we have an advantage, and so we can talk to somebody a little differently because, we're making the bacon, right? We're bringing home the bacon. So, but we were pretty strict about that, and we associated with, and we're partners with agents who I really cared about that, who wound up being the top agents in all of sports because of that, because they set things up front with their athletes about giving back, about contributing to society, about setting up a foundation or charity, about doing the right thing. And my partner, Steve Rosner, represented Lawrence Taylor for a long time before we got together. And Lawrence really, Steve would tell you to this day, without Lawrence Taylor, Steve wouldn't be where he is today. Lawrence was Steve's calling card. However, at a certain point, and we're out there saying we represent the good guys. Now, Lawrence, believe me, he's got a heart of gold. I don't mean to say bad things about Lawrence, but I was in a presentation one time, and we listed all of our athletes, and we're talking to a potential #1 draft pick in the NFL draft, and we're talking to his mom, and she's looked at she looked at our player list, and she said, and she saw Lawrence Taylor, she said, I thought you represent all the good guys. So I looked at my partners and Steve for the first time and said, we might have a problem here. We gotta back up what we say. Yeah. And that's not to say Lawrence wasn't a good guy, but to the public, that wasn't, necessarily his image, obviously. So, right. So you have to stick to your guns, and you have to be honest with these guys, and you have to, today it's harder than ever. It's harder than ever. There's just, everything's instantaneous. There's a double-edged sword of all this digital distribution. The social media has its ups and its downs. It's a blessing and a curse for sure. Yep. It's a blessing because it can really get you out there and get the word out to many constituents instantaneously. There's nothing, we couldn't even imagine that years ago. But on the flip side, say something wrong or show up in a picture that just looks incriminating, even if you didn't even do anything wrong, and all of a sudden, not only is it not only are you getting feedback on whatever vehicle it was, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be, Snapchat, whatever it might be, but now it's headlines in newspapers and on, there's 24-hour sports in every single city in the country, on radio, on television, streaming, on the phones. So instantaneously there's headlines because you said something wrong 5 seconds ago. And it's a different world. It's really hard to manage an image in that world.
So I see where we're going with the conversation, and I wanna take it another layer deep real quick before we start to wrap up. But so we're talking about brand reputation and brand management, and so now what happens, right? Now I don't expect you to use any names whatsoever, but what happens when something like that happens, right? I know somebody who freaks out. They get one bad Yelp review. They're ready to drive to the guy's house and take him out with a baseball bat, right? Right? It's one Yelp review, right? Now, what happens when you're at this level and somebody takes something the wrong way and they blast you out? Meanwhile, the guy probably didn't even do anything at all, right? How do you coach your talent to get through that? Do you have a process? Is there some mindset stuff that you can kind of share with us maybe to kind of help if somebody's ever going through something like that? Because as you get bigger, the press starts to come in, the pressure starts to mount. Like, how do you get through those? I think of musicians, right? I think of, like, say Drake comes out with a song that everybody hates, right? The guy gets blasted for weeks. How do you come back from that? Well,
there's a lot of different scenarios. First you just got to evaluate what's true and what's not, right? You can never react on emotion. I was back at Y&R and there was the Tylenol scandal way back when. So you talk about crisis management. We literally have a crisis management team. We have an attorney who is one of the foremost. We know who to call immediately should anybody, God forbid, get arrested, get busted, whatever. We also are in instantaneous contact with our clients. And frankly, there's enough people out there. I've been in the business 35 years. We normally get tipped off that somebody heard, that somebody whatever, or something's coming out.
Okay.
And we immediately, investigate that. And then you have to have the people who are experts at all of this other digital distribution and so on, right? You have to have the people that can take stuff down. You have to have people that can, and importantly, the real thing is to get the positive word out to trump the negative word.
But how do you work with the
talent? Reviewed on Yelp, you got to get 300 people to say the good stuff about you, right?
Right.
So you have to have that at your beck and call, and you have to. That's about relationships. That's about building up equity. Listen, if you're a bad guy, you're a bad guy. It's going to be hard to correct that stuff, right? But if you're a good guy and you slipped up, or you made a stinky album, or somebody saw you with a beer in your hand. You can get that corrected if you've built up brand equity, which is what you were talking about before, right? If, Drake sold millions and millions of albums, whatever they call them today, he's got, he's going to have a lousy song once in a while. It's just, the Beatles had a lousy song maybe once every 100 or so.
Yeah. The funny thing is like, people are brutal. And I like what you said.
Well, that's the other thing. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's the other thing. I tell everybody, it's always the silent majority, right? So that's the worst part of social media, which is it's given a voice to every miserable person in the world, right? So they now have a voice, and for whatever reason, I'm the eternal optimist. My wife tells me I have the thickest rose-colored glasses in the world, right? Always glasses, 1% full. I'm always looking at things that way. But a lot of people, that's why I don't even understand the mentality. You wake up in the morning and you want to blast people, right? I don't watch the news. I don't watch. I can't take it. I don't want to. And why? You tell me. You might be able to launch this. You might be able to do it. Here's an idea for you. Let's launch the Good News channel.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a good news channel? Think about it. How sick is our society that no one's ever thought to launch a good news channel.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we want to tune in and listen to good stuff?
Oh.
You can't find it.
No, exactly.
You wait for a news broadcast. You wait all day. Maybe they have some human interest story somewhere for 10 seconds, but it's after they tell you 8 million things that are all screwed up.
Yeah, when I watched the news, when I used to watch the news, I would watch like the nightly news right after the local news, and they would have all this BS, and then the last 30 seconds. Oh, they would do something about St. Jude, or they would do something about, right?
Well,
the last 30 seconds.
Well, that's my point. So that's the problem with social media, because everybody wants to feed off negativity. That's what gets headlines. You know, my partner just made a comment the other day about the quarterback that got drafted by the Jets, and he was talking about what image should he have, and he said, you know, he should try to play like Joe Namath and have an off the field. On the field, he should have a career like Joe Namath, and off the field, he should have a career like Derek Jeter. I mean, when you think about a guy who was able to exist in the New York marketplace, as tough as that is, and avoid any controversy for that many years, it's a testimony to the kind of guy he is, but it's also just incredibly remarkable. So that's what I talk about, though, when you talk about building up brand equity, you know, and people love you and people trust you. You know, they're much more hesitant to take shots. But I just don't even know in this society right now that Derek Jeter could do what he did. You know. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of lived through the transition of all that, but you know, it's just really tough out there. You know, you have to expect it and you have to anticipate it.
Yeah, I mean, as you get bigger, as you grow your business, listen, the past 10 years of my career as an entrepreneur, it wasn't walks in the park. I mean, there was times I dropped the ball, I had to pick it back up, I had to do the right thing, and that's what I think. I definitely want to hear your point. When you do the right thing, the right things happen. You know, it might hurt, it might sting, it might set you back a couple of months, but at the end of the day, you did the right thing. Correct.
Well, you've just delivered a speech that my partner and I have made, you know, 1 million times. When we're negotiating, I mean, that's our negotiating tactic. Listen, do the right thing. You know, this guy's done X, Y, or Z. This is what he deserves. Do the right thing. We don't ask for the last dime. We don't. You know, if we're working with corporate America, I really work on the corporate side much more. You know, I love when I can sit around the table and I had some funny stories. One time I was with David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, and we're with like 6 different groups around the table. And his right-hand guy, real prominent guy at the NBA now, runs the Warriors actually, and he was the lieutenant commissioner, and he said to David, and listen, maybe we ought to ask Frank to step out of the room because he's kind of conflicted. So David said, conflicted? He goes, nobody's more conflicted than Frank. He represents every single person at this table. So he can't say anything to anybody, so you don't have to worry about it. And so I take a lot of pride in that because, you know, I have relationships with people that I could put them together and say, listen, I think you all really can come together for a common cause and do business together. And I take the greatest pride in that, you know. But if I'm not transparent and I'm not honest with every single one, say, yeah, I work for you. Yeah, I work for you. Yeah, I work for you. If I'm trying to sneak or I'm trying to, you know, be any kind of, in any way duplicitous, it's going to come back to haunt you. You know?
Oh man, it's when you start lying, you know, you start getting caught up. Listen, it's not worth it at the end of the day. It's a job.
It's what you said. It's doing the right thing, you know. And frankly, sometimes you have to step out. You know, sometimes the right thing is, you know what, this just isn't going to work, and that's happened on occasion too. Or you know, I've had business with some really close friends who got important positions, and they hired us right away, knowing our reputation and thinking that we can do stuff for them. And then you realize in a work environment, it's different than in a personal environment. And I've had to step away from some relationships because, I said, I'd rather be your friend. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got too many years vested in us getting along with each other. I'd rather be your friend than keeping your agency or whatever and have you as my client, because our friendship's not going to last if this, that's just the fact of life. So I've had to step out of things because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that if anybody that's listening or watching that, if there's a value, if there's value there that you can take from that, I mean, that is so important. I've gotten private messages very similar to that. Like, what do I do? I'm in business with my best friend. I don't know what to do. It's not really working out. And I tell them, sometimes it's just best to walk away if you want to salvage the relationship. And yeah. That's a great takeaway. So as we turn the corner, because I know you want to get back to your grandson, as we wrap up here, what would you say 3 takeaways would be for those folks that are out there trying to build up a personal brand, right? That should be their 3 commandments every day. Like, what are those 3 things that they should do on a daily to help them build that brand equity?
A few things, a couple we mentioned, but one that we didn't mention was work your ass off. Okay. And, there are lots of different quotes from famous people about, if you're going to succeed, you got to outwork everybody. And you can't expect people to follow you or to do business with you if they don't think that you have a great work ethic and you're not working hard. That can take tons of forms to it. It doesn't mean you gotta, be in the office 24/7 or whatever, because you definitely need balance in your life, and people understand that too. But part of working hard is also be prepared. Okay. It takes effort to be prepared. Don't come into a meeting. Don't come into, that's just a pet peeve of mine. Don't come into a meeting unprepared. I speak to graduate students who want to get into the sports business, and I get asked to speak a lot. And I go to do guest lectures at all the top universities in Manhattan and so on. And we've made a habit of hiring a lot of interns, and I take them with us when we go and I speak. And I bet them on the way. I say, what percentage of the students in the classroom do you think are going to know my personal history? And they go, oh, everybody's going to know. I go, okay, I'll bet you that it's under 20%. And I'll bet you dinner, I'll bet you lunch, whatever. And they all take the hook. Mm-hmm. And I'm always right. Okay, I'm always right. I ask people to raise their hands if they went on the internet and looked me up. I mean, what do you got to do?
It's 2 seconds.
Information instantaneous. Now, somebody says, we're going to have this person who's been in the industry a long time come and speak to you. If you're interested in working in the industry, aren't you going to want to get in front of me, impress me, ask me a great question, get your card to me or whatever? I don't know. I just think that way. Shouldn't you prepare? No, it just blows my mind. So, and when people come into my office, if they're not prepared, I tell them, turn around, go do your preparation, because, I'm not a guy who has my hands in every little detail. I like to hire great people. That comes with confidence, which is the second point I would make to you. Secure, confident people surround themselves with secure, confident people who can make them look better. Okay. And the greatest leaders will tell everybody else, you know what? I want you to go on to great success. So one of the things my partner and I are most proud of is all the people that are in the industry who have been tremendous success, who have had tremendous success, and they're incredibly loyal to us. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, hire great people, help them succeed, and 1 + 1 will equal 3. They'll help you be better. And guess what? You don't know it all. I don't care how great you are. I don't care how much experience you have. You can learn from people. One of my early bosses at Young at Rubicam, went on to terrific success. He wound up running the #1 branding agency in the world. Okay, Landor. But he was my boss, and we were flying to California, and I never forgot this. And he's been a friend, and we've worked together in many ways since. And he said, "Listen, on the plane," he turns to me and goes, "Listen, Frank," he goes, I could tell you're just on a skyrocket to success, and you're probably going to pass me at some point soon." He goes, "Just remember that I was good to you, and remember, I was a good boss, and I was a young punk, 20-something-year-old kid. I was like, wow, this guy's telling me that. What a great guy, right? What a confident, secure, great guy, right? That he's wishing for my success, and all he's saying is, remember that I was good to you, that I helped you." And so that having confidence enough to surround yourself with good people and root for them, because bad leaders and bad entrepreneurs think that they have to be the story. They're the only ones that can make the decisions. They're going to run the show. They're control freaks, and they surround themselves with insecure folks. And guess what? You know what? They never build a succession. They never build big leaders. It limits your growth. If you're surrounded by people who ultimately are just mediocre or even incompetent, because you're afraid that somebody else is going to have more success for you, or the client's going to like them better, or whatever it might be, or they might leave your company, and then you shouldn't be an entrepreneur, right? And nothing bugs me more than the guys in the industry that I think are leading some places that are so insecure. They never have a succession plan. They never have a number 2. You never know. All you do is see them in front of the camera. Me, I'd rather be way below the radar screen and have my people succeed. So that's another part. And, lastly, so it sounds so simplistic, right? Work hard, have confidence and be willing to take risks and treat people good. And like I said, the last thing to me really is be honest, and that means so many different things, but you got to be honest with yourself first, right? You got to look yourself in the mirror and say, can I really do this? And it's no bad thing if you don't have the entrepreneurial vein, and it's no bad thing if you finally look at yourself and say, this wasn't made for stuff. I know so many people, like in education, in other fields, and they're always, I'd rather be in business. People think the grass is always greener. I got a really dear friend of mine who had a whole great career in education, and he stepped outside that. He went into the business world, and had the little entrepreneurial bug. He lasted about 1.5 years, and he finally just said, "Oh my God, I didn't realize." When you're out there and nobody's just going to write you a paycheck because, you no matter if you did a good job, you did a bad job, all you did was show up and you got a paycheck. That's a whole different world than being an entrepreneur and being out there and saying, "Oh my God, I only got, $2 in the bank. Where's my next paycheck going to come from?" Right? It's coming out of your own wallet. So you can't forget that. So you really have to be honest with yourself, and then you really got to be honest with the people that work with you and with your clients and with the people that you ultimately sign. What are your capabilities? What are you really delivering? What's your point of difference? What's your value? And you have to price yourself accordingly. I see agencies all the time, and that's been an advantage of ours. We've stayed nimble. I used to say we're like the PT boat, but nobody knows what that means anymore. I used to say we get in, we get out, right? But I think it's been good for us because we say, these major companies get so much overhead. They come in, do a new business pitch, and they tell you and at the new business pitch, the heads of the agency are all there and everything. But then, once they win the account, you're getting some junior account executive managing your business, and they're charging you for the senior executive. So we always say, you get what you pay for.
That's fantastic advice, Frank. There's so many nuggets there. I can't wait to break this down. You're actually going to get like a little 60-second best moments clip of this interview. I'll send it to you once it's produced. But man, there's just so much value in this episode, and I hope those folks that are watching and listening are taking notes and understanding the importance of brand equity, brand reputation, brand management, all of these things that Frank mentioned before. This is what's going to sustain your business for years to come, and preparation. He talked about preparation. I mean, I don't know how many folks come to me and ask me to develop logos and websites and sales funnels for them, and they've done no preparation on their market, and they want the fancy, they want all the bells and whistles, but there's no sense of building any of that if you haven't done the proper legwork first, the preparation, the strategy, all that foundational work. Because I always say you're trying to build a house on stilts in sand when you try to go about it that way, versus doing the work and working like hell to understanding everything from the bottom up. So then you build a mansion, and that thing will withstand any weather, any season. And it's just something that will last. And that's building legacy.
Absolutely. And absolutely. I did a lot of consulting in my life, and that's what I learned way back, Young and Rubicam, when I talked about positioning. Very simple for the people out there. Who are you, or what are you? To whom? Target audience, and what's your point of difference? Simple. But if I go around a room with 12 executives in a company, and I just say, that's all, just get a pencil and a pad. I don't need all the other fancy stuff. Get rid of it. I just want you to say, what is your company, or who are you, and to whom, who's your customer, and what's your point of difference versus your competition? And I'll get 12 different answers. And if I get 12 different answers, I get hired, right? Because I know that they're lost.
Yeah.
And if they all get the same answer, then I go, you know what? You guys got your act together. You don't need me, right?
That's right.
You know who you are. You know who you're going after. And you know why you're better or different or whatever it might be. So anybody that's looking at branding, that's what branding is. It's really positioning. It's an overused word or whatever, but that's really what it is. That's what it was. It means that takes on other connotations now, but that's really what I think it's about.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. You're dead on. When we were at the breakfast the other day, and you pulled that out of your cap when somebody was talking to you, I said, this is a man that knows what he's talking about when it comes to positioning, branding, and all of that, because that's it. That's the foundation. You can answer those 3 questions. You're going to be on a right course, and you're going to succeed. Now, you could always refine and tweak and fine tune, and that's how you get better. But those are the 3 things. So Frank, thanks again for coming on the show. It's tough to get a guy like you down, and
My pleasure. It's great. It's great reconnecting with you. For your audience, you went right on after what I had talked about. You got an incredible memory. I used to think my memory was really good, but I'm getting older. You were just right on with. That's remarkable. I don't know if you just took those mental notes, but congratulations, and congratulations on all that you've achieved. It's really terrific to see.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And so there you have it, guys. Another podcast episode in the books for you. My challenge for you today is to get out there and execute on some of these things that Frank had mentioned today, because you could listen to us for another 3 hours if you want. We'll continue on, but if you don't do anything with the information, it's absolutely nothing, and it means nothing. So that's my challenge for you guys today, is to take some of these nuggets, whatever resonated with you today, and make it happen. And then you'll start to see the magic happen. So real quick, guys, at the end of every episode, I like to just do a couple of quick housekeeping things. One, if you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, I ask you to do that, and I thank you in advance for that. And if you haven't shared it with a friend or a colleague, I ask you to do that as well. The more people that we can impact and help get to the next level quicker, that's what we're all about. And if you could take a quick second, if you like the value, if you like the content, write a quick little written review on iTunes. You have no idea how far that goes for me personally and for the show. And again, thanks for all of you again for tuning in and watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Talk to you soon, guys.